local people, local news and events, local sports, local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Hey, we want to welcome you inside Border City Furniture for the PROspectives, a positive look at our community and its residents. And today we're excited to welcome Stacey and Kim Capiral to the program. We're going to chat a little bit about their time at Broadcast Center. At one point, all three of us worked at Broadcast Center, and we're excited to be here at Border City Furniture. Stacey, you were saying, I just love the smell of furniture stores.
I do. It's just something about it. I guess it's that kind of new home, new car smell, right?
Yeah,
so
it is.
Yeah, and comfortable seating.
Yeah.
So you might want to bring this into Nissan.
Oh, I want to do this all the time.
Absolutely.
It's so comfortable, especially this set.
No
I don't know
kidding.
if I'm supposed to sit like this, but I think this
You can't
is how I'm
not.
gonna, yeah.
But it's so comfortable,
This is
right?
the right way to sit. Yeah.
I think it reclines. Just pull it back, Kim.
Well, this is Border City Furniture, where the sale never ends. We also remind you that right now at the new Lloydminster Nissan, we do have a sale that's going to end. Get 0% financing, OAC on the ever-popular Nissan Rogue and Kicks models. And in the service department right now, only until the end of the month, save 25% on AC work. That'll set you up for what is supposed to be a hot summer. Has not been yet. But I understand there's some heat coming next week. Plus, we can save you 10% on oil changes all month long, and that's all makes and all models, only at the new Lloydminster Nissan. Superior Water specializes in nothing but water, and with over 22 years in the business, they're proud and confident that their water and their service is superior. For iron filters, water softeners, reverse osmosis distillers, chlorine removal, and H2S odor removal, give Superior Water a call at 780-875-6636 or stop in and see them at their 57th Avenue location right beside Sheepskin Loft, and stay hydrated with pure, clean water. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste, and it is Superior Water. Well, Cupcakes for Caregivers is proudly brought to you by Sobeys Lloydminster and the Lloydminster District United Way. Have you nominated a caregiver yet? If you know someone that makes a huge difference in taking care of others, whether it be professionals or a family member, Cupcakes for Caregivers is a great way to thank those individuals. So this could be a nurse or a doctor, but it also might be a teacher or bus driver, even a family member. So nominate them today by sending an email to livewithkurtprice@gmail.com. The parade broadcast, which has become such a staple in Lloydminster. How many years, Stacey, do you think?
Oh my gosh.
60 years, I think.
Well, the one station was on the air for 65, the other for 50. But yeah, we had been doing that broadcast for so many years, and it just had become a staple. I can't tell you. I mean, the first time I moved to Lloydminster, because I've worked here 3 different times.
Yep.
In the building under the 3 different owners. At the last, of course, being Stingray, but the first was when Mary Shortell had owned it,
Yep.
and then of course Ken Ruptash and Graham Brown. And we were doing the parade then in '97, so I'm not sure exactly, but it's been a long time. So.
Yeah, I like this year will be, the theme is 120 years.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if they broadcast that parade for 60,
Yeah.
for half of that time.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing it back, Kurt.
Yeah, we're going to bring it back. We're working with Video Images and Forges Media, and you're going to be able to watch that on July 9th, 10 a.m. And we want to thank Lloydminster District Co-op. They are our major sponsor, so thank you to Lloydminster District Co-op, as well as the Gold Horse Casino in the city of Lloydminster. So it'll start at 10 a.m., and this year they kind of have 2 parade marshals. They have 2 families that they're celebrating. So that's, and it's not for me to announce who they are, but I'm excited.
Thought you were going to spill the beans.
I'm excited to talk to. I saw one of the gentlemen in the grocery store the other day.
Yeah.
And he was quite excited about it.
awesome.
He was like, "Yeah, our family's been involved for quite a while, and
Excellent.
so this is really good." So we'll be on YouTube and we'll be on Facebook as well. And Rogers TV has asked about broadcasting it. They have some rules, so we're kind of looking into what we can and can't do there as well. Time now for Live in Lloydminster, everything entertainment. Each Thursday here on Live with Kurt Price, it's your insight into upcoming shows. And we start with what's new at the Vic Juba with Sierra Bennett, who today takes a look behind the scenes.
School is officially out for summer. Congratulations to the class of 2025. everyone, I'm Sierra Bennett from the Vic Juba Community Theatre, and today I just wanted to talk about a few things that not everyone knows about the Vic Juba. The first one is we have a Patrons Perks program. What is the Patrons Perks program? Well, it has everything to do with your tickets. Not only is your ticket your entry to amazing performances here at our theater, but it's also your key to a bunch of exclusive perks all around town on show days. Enjoy discounts and specials at participating local businesses to make your night out even better. Present your ticket on the day or night of a show at any of our partner establishments and enjoy 10% off of your purchase. To find out who all of our partner establishments are, go to vicjubatheater.ca/perks. All of the information is there, as well as links to their websites. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is actually our e-newsletter. So this is something that not a lot of people know about, and it's extremely exclusive, and it always gives you the inside scoop of what's to come before anyone else knows. Get first dibs on tickets, be the first to know about upcoming shows, and even get promo codes. Go to our website, vicjubatheater.ca/e-newsletter to sign up. Don't worry, we won't spam you with things. I promise, I'm the one that sends them out. Oh, one more thing, but I'm just gonna go over there. Come July, our box office will be switching to the summer hours, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and will also be closed on June 30th and July 1st for Canada Day. Have a good long weekend.
And at May Cinema 6, daily matinees have returned as of tomorrow, as of Friday. And you can check out F1 the movie starting tomorrow at May Cinema 6. It follows the huge popularity boost that F1 has received in North America due to Drive to Survive. Catch F1 the movie from the same director as Top Gun Maverick. And this racing epic stars Brad Pitt and focuses on a former F1 star played by Pitt, who is coaxed back into a struggling F1 team to mentor a team with an upcoming and promising young driver. You can also catch at May Cinema 6 How to Train Your Dragon, which was #1 at the box office last week. Elio was #3. Lilo and Stitch, 28 Years Later, which was #2. And Megan 2.0. Get showtimes and tickets for all current and upcoming movies, including for F1 the movie at May Cinema 6 now at maytheaters.com. And live in Lloydminster is proudly brought to you by the Vic Juba Community Theatre and May Cinema 6. BioClean Disaster Services is committed, certified, reliable, and they will help you get your life back. 1-833-246-8326. They're proud to be Lloydminster's local restoration service. They're also Lloydminster's largest restoration company. And when you talk about fire and flood and disaster and any kind of we had a tornado around here yesterday.
Absolutely,
anything that you're looking at and rebuilding, when you contact BioClean Disaster Services, you're contacting somebody who's going to take care of your belongings and your property, of course, but more than anything, take care of your family. 1-833-246-8326. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back here at Border City Furniture for the PROspectives, where we're talking TV and broadcasting in general. I mean, I only ever did one day of TV. So,
but you were in a lot of the television stories. Remember the April Fool's prank?
I was in a lot of that.
With the co-op parkade?
We can talk about that.
At CK McKean Roofing, they understand what it took to put that roof over your head for your family. With over 20 years of experience under their belt, they strive to show you that with their workmanship and their integrity. Not all roofing companies are created equal, and that's why CK McKean Roofing encourages you to focus on your most important investments, your home and your family. CK McKean Roofing. Roofers do it on top.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with a Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back, you help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
Oh, we're excited to welcome you in for today's program. We're at Border City Furniture, where the sale never ends in downtown Lloydminster. And we've got two people here joining us today who I worked with at Broadcast Center. That's what it was when I started there, Broadcast Center. Still I refer to it as Broadcast Center.
Yeah.
But we have Kim Capiral, where were you there, Kim, a year?
No, I was there for 3 years.
You were there for 3
I was there for 3 years.
Time flies.
That's how long we were there. It's like,
2013,
Kim had a
2016.
cup of coffee
Yeah.
there. But 3 years, I didn't even realize 3 years. And when did you start?
So October 20th, I could remember it because the New Cap was my first job ever when I moved from the Philippines. I handed out my resume, but they weren't hiring. And then, and then 3 years later.
3 years later, you got hired.
Yeah. No, sorry.
Oh.
A week after I moved in from the Philippines, I applied and I got an interview right there and then with Phil Ferguson, who was the manager at that time. And then a week later, I was hired.
So Phil was the manager at that time.
He was
TV
the
production.
production because you started in
yeah.
Master
I
Control,
started
right?
Master Control.
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah, sitting.
I was like in that, sitting in front of the TV, Heartland commercial on. Boop.
Yeah, because we had the CBC affiliation at
Yeah.
that time because we
Yes.
were CBC and CTV, and then we switched to Global and CTV, and then we switched to Rogers
Yeah.
and CTV. So
Right.
there's been all those different affiliations in that time.
So Stacey, here's the big question:
Yes.
3 times.
Yes.
What was your first? Stacey was, of course, the news director.
The last time, yeah. So the
Yeah.
first time I came in 1997 to 2000, I came from Swift Current. I'd been there. That's where my first radio job was. And then I came. Michael Higgins was the news director, and it was solely radio. Then I went to CJWW Saskatoon after 3 years, and then I got a call from Michael in 2000. Because he was preparing to kind of go to Edmonton, and we had a new general manager, Mike Keller,
Yep.
and he was looking for someone to kind of move into that news director role. And so I came back. So that would have been in, 2000 to 2000. Yeah, 1997 to 2000 was the first time. Then Saskatoon, 2000 to 2005, and then back here, 2005 to 2011. Then I went to CTV Edmonton and helped them set up CTV Morning Live, and they had crazy, crazy hours. Like I was starting work at 2 a.m, and you're supposed to be done by 10 a.m., but I was still there 3, 4 in the afternoon, and my health started to get really bad. And there was things that happened at the station while I was away, and the newsroom had gotten into a little bit of disarray, and I actually got a call and they said, hey, would you be interested in coming back? So I came back later in 2011. I actually only ended up 6 months at CTV Edmonton, came back 2011, and then obviously until the layoffs here. So almost 14 years for the last time. So you look at that, like almost, I guess, 20 plus years total. That I was in Lloydminster working. Well, the first was Midwest Television, then it was New Cap, and then it was Stingray. So worked under all 3 banners, I guess.
So you actually started there long before I did, because I came along in 2000.
Yeah, so the second time around,
Yeah.
that's when.
And you weren't there when I started.
No. So yeah, I guess we came back and there was some overlap there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You, but I remember you as working there.
Right.
I remember then it's like, oh, Stacey's back. Oh, I
Yeah.
know who that is because
Yeah.
I remember watching her.
Yeah.
One of the advantages that I had when I started working at CKSA was I had watched everything and I had listened to the radio.
Right.
So when Neil Bergen, who hired me,
Yeah,
and
Neil.
I was hired for promotions and nights, basically nights and weekends. When he would explain a contest to me, he didn't have to explain it because I knew what it
You
was.
knew it, yeah.
Yeah, if they were giving away bikes from Factory Sports Excellence, I knew it was like, oh, this is your Mother's Day thing.
Yeah.
You know, like it was pretty simple. So, but Michael Higgins hired you.
Yes.
What a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome
Well,
guy.
and Michael was very detailed. And he was supposed to be about, they gave him 6 to 8 months and then have him go to Edmonton, and I would transition to the news director. Well, it had been well over a year, and Mike Keller came down, and he basically said, like, Mike, you got to go to Edmonton, because he said, I was worried that we had brought you to be news director, but you were reporting and stuff and learning, and then you were going to leave because you were never getting this spot. So Michael finally was able to pull himself away. If anybody knows Michael, he is work till the very last thing is done. He would some days do radio in the morning and anchor the 6 p.m. news at night, right? Like just long days, very dedicated. And he ended up pulling the pin finally and going to Lloydminster or to Edmonton. He was engaged. He's hosting Alberta Primetime.
Yep.
He started at Global Television there, and now he's with CTV. He's for a long time. He's been there hosting Alberta Primetime. Great guy, great mentor, and he was. A lot of people thought that he was, tough to work for, but he wanted things done right. And when you went out and had a story, like, you made sure you had all of the elements for that story. So I literally learned from the best, which was, awesome having him in there. And we still remain in contact today, and, shoot jabs at each other back and forth once in a while and talk about memories. Or a lot of people, I think, don't understand that we used to supply, when I say we, I mean the television station in general, but any stories that happened here, we would be the ones to supply the video. We would send our stories, like our full stories, or if they wanted just video footage or whatever, to those stations. So that sometimes Michael would request it. But I used to kind of laugh when people would say, oh, we hear more Lloydminster news on Global and CTV. And I'd be looking and I'm like, well, no, those are stories that we sent, and so we had them here. But I think also with the confusion with all the name changes, sometimes people didn't realize what network they were actually watching. So, yeah, we always supplied the stories to them. So,
yeah, Michael talked me down several times off cliffs.
Yeah.
Like, he was a really good sounding board.
Absolutely.
And a really good, like, he could tell. If something was wrong, Michael was one of those guys he could tell.
Yeah.
Like, he would just bring you in and kind of, like, well, come to my office, we'll have a chat.
Yeah.
And he was actually, when you have to do, I can't remember what they call it, but you have to do a write-up to know what you're kind of getting into.
Yeah.
He was the guy I did mine
the
with.
career investigation.
Oh, career investigation.
Yeah,
And he was like I got the feeling from Mike, was like, why would you want to be doing this? Like, you're not going to make any money.
And it's funny you mentioned that. Do you remember Pat Thomas, who was on the radio?
Yes, yeah, I remember.
So
when I worked at Bonanza, Pat was here, and he used to come into Bonanza once in a while for lunch.
Well, I just was told the story the other day that there was a guy who went in, and he was a huge Pat Thomas fan, and was like meeting his hero, and he wanted to be in broadcasting, and so he went in, and he's like, oh, Pat, I love listening to your show. I really want to do this when I grow up. And Pat says, hey, kid, you want to make money when you grow up? And the guy says, well, yeah. He's like, don't get into this business. That's the Pat Thomas story. So,
well, I actually applied to go to WABC in Saskatoon,
which is where I went.
And I got accepted. And then I went to their open house.
Oh.
So I was accepted, then I went to their open house.
Yeah.
And saw what it looked like.
Yeah.
And had the guy saying, like, if you want to eat macaroni and cheese all your life, broadcasting is for you. And I'm like, I don't want to eat macaroni and cheese all my life. So I didn't go.
Yeah.
I didn't go to WABC. I ended up I ended up working in Lloydminster for a few years, and then I went to Nate. Mm-hmm. And then just decided, okay, it is what I want to do, and let's throw caution to the wind.
Like, it is such a fun
is
industry.
fun.
Yeah.
It's such a unique job.
Yeah. What are some of your memories from so Phil hired you? How long till you went to? Because
I think it was only a few
right?
months. I think a few months in Master Control, and then there was an opening for a camera guy spot, which that's the spot I want to be in. I forgot the name of the guy that left, but yeah, he left, and then
there was a gazillion of them.
Yes.
Yes. Let's say camera guy number 44.
And then I took that position, and I was working in the newsroom for 2 years. So that's where my foundation started. And I always tell people, being at NewCap, being a camera guy was a part of my origin story of how I came to Canada and how I learned about Canada and whatnot. I always tell people that as an immigrant, as a newcomer to Canada, I was given a unique opportunity to see Lloydminster that way. Because one day I'll be in Maidstone. One day I'll be at City Council.
Yeah.
One day I'll be at the petting zoo.
Yeah.
And I'm super proud, because you find me another immigrant who can be at different places within the month. I bet you can't. And that was, yeah.
Do you remember any news stories that stood out for you? Like you mentioned the petting zoo.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were out there all the time at the petting zoo.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah, it was
they get
awesome.
new
Yeah, Wallace and
animals
Bonnie out there.
Yeah.
Oh, they would call us and hey, we have a baby wolf. Or
Right.
here's a story. One of my scariest stories was actually at the petting zoo because I don't know if you remember, but they had a lion out there.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and so the first time they invited me out, it was when it was a cub, and it was cute, and I got to hold this lion, and and then so Wallace invites me back about a year later. Well, this lion is huge, and so we were going to do an interview, an update, and he says, "Well, let's do it in the cage." I said, "Wallace, is that safe?" He's like, "Well, usually." And so it was Jim McCardle, camera person, no surprise there. So we go in, and of course I'm trying to do the interview, and the lion is on top of, it's like a kind of a, they had a building for it so it could go in the shade.
Yeah.
And he comes down, he starts walking around, and he bumps me. And I felt like I'd been checked by like a linebacker, and I'm trying to do this interview. And so then Wallace goes over to him and, he scratches his belly. It's just like, a big cat, right? But I was glad when that interview was over because I was like, he knows Wallace, but he doesn't know me. But of course, Wallace didn't have any fear, right? So yeah, that was one of my scariest interviews.
Did you ever do any with snakes?
Yes, actually. And another Jim McCardle special because he always wanted that good stand-up, right? So there was a fellow in town that had a petting zoo, not a petting zoo, it was like a reptile kind of a sanctuary in his basement.
Was that Kim Ducker?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we go in, and I am terrified of snakes. Snakes, spiders, anything like that, not my jam. But I was like, okay, they're all in cages. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So Kim brings out, it's a 8-foot, like a boa constrictor, it was an albino python. Oh. And Jim's idea was, well, Stacey, why don't you put it around your neck to do the stand-up? I said, first of all, it's huge. Secondly, I'm terrified. Well, and then, of course, Kim was on it. He's like, no, that'll make great TV. No, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. And so what we did is Kim held the head of this snake, and I basically had the end of the body and the tail that I just held, and I could feel this thing. And snakes have a weird dynamic to them, right?
I couldn't do that, Stacey. I couldn't do it.
Well,
I'm like Indiana Jones.
And of course, they move the muscles, right? So I could feel on the back of my neck, you could feel it kind of contracting. And I did that stand up. Jim has a still photo. He actually pulled out of it, and my eyes are like this big. But, it made for a good stand up in the end. So, yeah.
That's kind of like a lost art now, to be honest. Like the stand up, the creative stand up.
Yeah,
I always think about, well, how can we do this creatively?
Yeah.
If we're on a baseball field, or this is how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. Well, and I think it took us about 45 minutes to shoot that stand-up because every time they'd go to put it around me, take it off. Because, I thought for sure it's a python. It's going to wrap around me. It doesn't happen that quickly, but that's what's in your head.
No, I'm with you. Because we travel all the time. You go to Mexico and stuff like that. And they have huge iguanas and all kinds of snakes. They're like, hold for a picture, hold for nothing. What's your favorite story you remember?
I think one story that really stuck out, and I don't think it's that big, but I think it's funny in my head. I was tasked to do a story because at this point, they're sending out camera guys without the reporters, right? So I was sent out to Macklin, Co-op Macklin, and to do a story about, I think that's when they started doing the handicap carts, I think. So I pulled into Macklin. I've never been to Macklin. With the new cap van, as I was pulling up, everyone was clapping. Like they're so happy that oh no, the news guy is here because it's all deckled up.
Are you kidding?
Oh yeah, they're so happy. Like the kids are happy because now we're finally get featured and whatnot. And then I came down and it's like, I think it's a letdown because it's only the camera guy. It's that Asian guy that they sent. But I just thought like these, that's again, like that's the understanding of like community. Like this is how like the TV was so essential in that community or in every small town.
And I think it still is. Like local television is so important, especially in these days where you can tune to any station and get national news, but you're not going to find out the score of the local soccer team or, you see your grandson scoring a goal in hockey, right? Like, that's the stuff that is so important. And I feel like Lloydminster has lost not having the television station here anymore. And then, of course, Medicine Hat shut down a couple of weeks right after we were closed down. So, it's just a sad way that the landscape is becoming now, because who's going to tell those stories? And yes, there are still radio stations and newspaper, but I just think that television has much more of an impact. When you see you can see them and you see the visuals and you know, like Kim, when you were talking about stories, my favorite Kim story is my philosophy was always ask, and they can all, the worst that could happen is no. So I knew that Journey, the band, which is one of my favorite bands, was going to be touring and going to Edmonton, Saskatoon, this whole area. So I thought, I'll just message their publicity person and see, you know, I was doing a documentary because we did a lot of documentaries out of Broadcast Center as well, like historically. Matter of fact, under Michael Higgins, you had to do one a year. So I was doing one on Canadian bands, for the most part Canadian bands, but bands from the 80s, and how music videos changed what they did, right? And so I'd interviewed a ton of Canadian bands, and I'm like, well, Journey, come on, the ultimate 80s band, right? So I sent an email, and if I get this call, I'm sitting at home one afternoon, and it's Neil Sean's wife. And she's like, oh, hey, just wanted to make sure it was legit. And yeah, we'd love to have you come out. So I call Kim right away and we go to Edmonton and we do an interview. We were supposed to have 10 minutes, ended up having 45 minutes with Neil Sean. Yeah. And we met Arnel Pineda, who was the lead singer at the time, and, you know, do our thing. We got to, Kim's getting all kinds of fabulous shots, and we're, you know, get to watch from the side of the stage, which is awesome. We get back, we're all pumped up. And about 1 a.m, I get a text message from Neil's wife. Do you and Kim want to come to Saskatoon to our show, shoot some more footage and do some more interviews? Okay. All
right. At this point, we're just really like having fun now.
Absolutely, yeah. So then Kim and I go to Saskatoon, and Kim, Arnel's assistant, was also from the Philippines, and so he and Kim are chatting in their native language, and they're getting autographs signed, and you know, we were having lunch, and I didn't realize at the time, but the drummer, who was the substitute drummer, normally it's Dean Castronovo, but they had a substitute drummer, turned out he had been the drummer for David Bowie, and like all this cool stuff, and we're just sitting there having sandwiches with him. Yeah. So, you know, again, you talk about unique experiences, but Kim was like just all over the stage and like, you know, these fabulous shots, and then we got, you know, great stuff for the documentary. But I did a lot of shoots with Kim because he was, you know, always fun to go on shoots with. But that was
we also almost hit a moose.
Oh,
I can't remember if that was like on our way back from
that was on the way back, Saskatoon. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So
I still have my hat, by the way. You gave me an autograph hat, Neil Sean.
Oh, okay.
Autograph hat.
Yeah.
Because you know I was such a Journey fan.
Yeah.
And I love Journey.
Yeah.
Like, I love Journey.
Well, and what other job do you get to have that experience, right?
Well,
like,
and you talk about almost hitting a moose. I remember being with Reed Wilkins, and he's told this story too. We went to cover the Allen Cup, and on our way back, we had a snowstorm. And we literally were driving with the door open to see where the white line was.
Oh my goodness.
To get back.
Yeah.
But you know, TV did that kind of stuff. Towards the end, there wasn't a budget to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but TV used to be so into travel and so into doing all that kind of stuff. Those were the kind of things that I think that I remember.
Yeah,
like
well, and we figured it out like when
Cold Lake. You guys were in Cold Lake all the time,
absolutely,
right?
and when I first started there was I had lunch with a former staff member about a week ago, and when we were there in the 90s, there were 73 people in that building, 73 that staff that were working in the television station. And like just before we were like laid off, the newsroom at one point, we had full weekend casts, we had live late night casts, we had the noon cast, everything. And we had, we had 3 people just in the sports department. That's true. And when, just before we were laid off, there were 5 total staff members plus myself. So we couldn't do what we wanted to do.
It's funny because I remember when the chuck wagons would roll into town, there used to be a late night broadcast, Rolling Thunder.
Yeah.
And they had hay bales brought in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how many mice do you think were in those hay bales?
Oh my goodness.
Like all of a sudden there's a mice infestation at the television radio station.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder where they came in. They bring in these hay bales and everything.
And you know, that was pressure to get that show done because the Chucks would wrap up like 8:30 or 9, and that show was on live. I think it was 11:30.
Yeah.
And so Bruce Bosser, who was the editor, I don't know how this didn't break him, honestly, because that was massive stress.
Bruce. Yep.
And it was beta tapes, of course. So sometimes the tapes would get eaten, and you'd have to, you know, and you. This was a full half-hour show, and now you have to realize editing now, as Kim can talk about, is you know, much easier than when you had beta tapes, right?
Oh yeah.
You have to wait. Like you're at the mercy of the time, for sure. Yeah.
But they did that all the time, like documentaries, like even the number of documentaries I was able to do, it's exciting that you had that opportunity outside of the regular news. Like Mike Keller, who was the GM who we spoke about, he was very much you got to spend money to make money. He sent myself and a cameraman named Dan Barry down to NORAD in Colorado Springs for their 50th anniversary, because of course NORAD is joint Canada and the United States. and we did a documentary on the 50th anniversary of NORAD. Like, we were able to get in, and again, it was through the connections of stories we had done. We did a ton of stories at Four Wing Cold Lake, met a public affairs officer who then was working down there and said, hey, if you ever want to come down, me never thinking that would be an opportunity, but I pitched it to Mike. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And here's the amazing connection of the small world. We walk into NORAD, the building in Colorado Springs, and we meet our public affairs officer. The very first person that we interview was born and raised in Bonnyville and was working in the military at NORAD.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, didn't you get to ride in an F-18?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And again, that was because of, I used to go up to Cold Lake once a week, if you can believe it, to do a story, or we bank a couple of stories up there, right? And so I got to know a lot of the people. Maple Flag used to be on all the time.
Yep.
And so I did a documentary on Maple Flag, which was awesome. Honest to God, I don't think there's a part of that base we didn't report on.
Oh, all day long they were.
Yeah. And so I got called to the when I went up there for a story, the public affairs officer said the wing commander would like to speak with you. And I was like, oh, because you don't know, did you do something wrong or what's the case, right? Or did I say, because, I was always trying to be very cognizant of the proper terminology and ranks and stuff. And so he says to me, he said, well, you've done a lot of stories up here, and I think maybe you should experience what some of these guys experience. And I still didn't catch on, right? And I said, oh, okay. And he said, yeah, why don't you go up for a flight? And still, because of Maple Flag, like we would get flights in Hercs or helicopters, so never crossed my mind. He's like, well, yeah, we'll get you up in a CF-18. And it was like, hello? Oh, I'm sorry? What was that? And so, yeah, it took a couple of months because I wanted to go up with a pilot that I knew, because it is nerve-wracking. Like, you have to do a 2-day course before they allow you to fly, like as a media person, because there's so much stuff that can happen, right? So, and if you don't pass your training the first day in your medical, then you can't go. And in the one course, you have an hour to learn how to safely eject from an aircraft, including getting yourself out of the harness. And if you don't pass on your first try after they showed you, you don't go. So it's just stressing. You got to get fitted for your G suit. And then I had some aircraft mechanics saying to me, the structural integrity of this aircraft, we've been working, and the public affairs officer apparently actually had a chat with them after, because she's like, you don't say that to someone who's going to be flying in an aircraft, right? Yeah. And you can't wear any makeup or hairspray because anything petroleum based can catch on fire. So I'm all great, I'm doing a TV story, I can't wear any makeup. I still have the footage, I have the stories. And if you see it, you can tell, in the briefing, my eyes are like, oh my God, what am I about to do? But it was amazing. It was honest to God, there's nothing that will top that in my career. But again, and that's, people think you have to work at the bigger television stations to have that happen. But I mean,
you just have to establish relationships.
Absolutely. And I had been to Cold Lake, and I love Cold Lake. Cold Lake is one of my favorite cities. It's beautiful. It is. It's so beautiful. The marina is just awesome. And we used to go up there every year because there's a fellow named Jim Beliveau, and he's the guy that designed the paint schemes for the demonstration Hornets all the time. Got to know Jim, and then he was part of the sailing club. So then, of course, they have the regatta, so you get a story that way, right? So it is. It's all about making those connections. And stories just come your way, and I love going to different communities. Like you said, I never got a fanfare, Kim, like you did.
I never got
I don't think it's me. It's the Decal News band.
I got booed in Neilburg.
But it was always just awesome to bring these stories, and people always ask, about the stories you covered, which are the most impactful. It's always the human interest stories. Crime, and city politics and stuff get their day, but it's always the human impact stories that make, in the end, those are the ones that people will remember for years and years. And, back then people would ask, can we get a copy on VHS? Or then it was DVD. And, so we were always doing copies and stuff for them because they wanted to remember that, right? Yeah. And one thing, Kurt, we should maybe mention is that on the archives, a lot of our stories, if people want to see, you can go to the archives and watch them there too.
I just downloaded a few for a client the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it. The problem with me is I can't stop watching them.
Yeah.
Once I start.
Well, the one we were talking about before the show, which I still think is the best piece of video that's ever come out of Lloydminster. Do you want to talk about that now? Or?
Let's show it, and then
okay.
what it basically set it up for us, Stacey.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is. And it just was timing. So we had a cameraman named Daniel Barry here. He is working in Toronto now at City TV. Along with Kim, probably the top 2 cameramen we've ever had. And he was just a guy who was tuned to news. And so he happened to be walking out of the building, and he had his camera, and the bunch of police cars were right by the tracks. And of course, where the broadcast center is located, the train tracks are right there. So he walks over there with the camera thinking he's going to get a story. Well, did he ever get a story? There was a guy who was a criminal who was on the loose, and a police officer tracked him down in a unique way, and I'll just maybe leave it at that, and we'll get into it after the video.
An alleged criminal.
Alleged,
You have to be careful.
alleged, that's
you have to
right.
Be careful, Stacey. An alleged
Right, alleged,
criminal.
yes.
Let's take a look at that footage. Early Monday afternoon, Lloydminster RCMP received a tip that a man who was wanted on a Canada-wide warrant for violating his parole was in the border city.
He was actually quite high on our radar because back in August, Vermilion RCMP went to apprehend him, and he fled from them, involved in a dangerous pursuit, dangerous driving, and he was in a stolen vehicle at the time. And then a short while ago, we attempted to apprehend him locally here, again, driving a vehicle, took us on a pursuit, dangerous driving as well.
Brian Grower was wanted after violating his parole. He was released on August 6th from a Drumheller prison, where he was serving 2 years on a robbery charge. When police went to arrest Grower Monday, he once again attempted to flee by running and jumping on to a passing train.
Just motivated to flee, didn't want to get captured, didn't want to get caught. And as you saw yesterday, anyone that's going to jump on a moving train, very dangerous, not recommended.
Marchand says the officers involved in the incident acted in an appropriate manner.
Again, we sometimes have to put ourselves in harm's way. Yesterday, we were motivated to get him because we've had a couple of incidents now where pursuits have gone on, and our ultimate and paramount concern is public safety. In that particular instance, it was him, the members in the train, and again, it turned out well, but the risk was there.
Daniel Barry, Newcap News. So imagine you're Daniel Barry and you're getting this footage and you're like, this is unbelievable. First thing I run through my mind, can we air this?
Well, it was CNN picked it up actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was national news, and what Dan did was he's just again right place, right time. But he was always on, right? And so he flipped that and he was running. So you see, it was I think he was corporal at the time, but Sergeant Juan Huss ended up being in charge of Kid Scotty. But at that time, he wasn't letting that criminal get away. So
he's the guy that pulls him off the train?
Yeah. So the guy, the alleged criminal, is on the train. And it was Juan Huss that pulled him off there. And the fact that Dan captured that, I mean, unreal. So yeah, like CNN.
Right place, right time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
National News picked it up. And we actually had quite a few stories. And again, most of the stories, I mean, stories like that, it's phenomenal video. But like when Don Cruz had his big pumpkins, as you know, Don from the area, just even the last one, National News picked that up. Like so many of those smaller stories. We had one about it was I think it was at Cold Lake or maybe it was Moose Lake. A family had trained their pug to basically enjoy water sports with them, and so we did a story with them. And again, National News picked it up. And so yes, it's the stories of this area, but also then the rest of the country gets to know Lloydminster and area because of those stories that were on the news, right? So, and there's just so many, like thousands and thousands of stories over the years. And one thing we should talk about too is the people who came through here. Like we had practicum students from NAIT, sometimes 4 at a time, but the number of the names of like broadcasters, I mean, Vanessa Lee, who went on to national news.
Still see Vanessa Lee.
Absolutely. She just, she sent me an email actually. She just resigned from journalism. She's got a communications job with the International Olympic Committee.
Oh, wow.
And she covered the Olympics. So she, again, it's about that relationship, right?
Yep, right?
So Daryl McIntyre, who was at CTV Edmonton for the longest time, was through here. I
couldn't believe when he was the morning voice of Chad. I was like, why would you want to get up early, Daryl?
Yeah.
Like, why would he want to do this?
Yeah.
He didn't do it very long.
Yeah.
But it was like, are you kidding? You could retire and you're doing like, like, doesn't he have horses or something?
Yeah,
too?
he's out in BC now. Yeah. But it's just a thing where Lloydminster was that training station. And even now, you go Western Canada for sure, you've got people who have worked in Lloydminster at the television station without a doubt in any role. Not as many out east, just because of the nature of it. Most of it was here.
Right.
But yeah, and we have a couple in the States. Jonathan Glasgow is at Newsmax. Hannah Tita is working in San Antonio.
Right.
Like there's just a number that are all over the place. Anna Stanislaw, who was here, she worked for CNN in the Philippines for a while.
Millionaire now.
Yeah.
Millionaire Anna.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Her mom ended up winning the lottery, and
Oh, really?
that's right. Yeah. So I think they have a resort or something now.
Yeah,
But yeah. So
She's doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good, Anna.
So many people have been
Claire
through
Hanna,
this.
right?
Claire,
Hanna.
that's right.
Yeah.
Claire, absolutely. I mean, Claire's been
She called volleyball at the Olympics.
and yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And she, every time you watch her, she's all over the world somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And she's Senators hockey now in the winter, and now she's doing Red Blacks football, and in the meantime doing some volleyball. And yeah, Claire is just absolutely, and she's such a great person. And that's the thing, is that you find, you make these connections here, and Claire was one of the first people that messaged me when she found out that Stingray closed the newsroom down, and she left a voicemail because I wasn't there to get the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But she said she actually called her mom about it because she was so emotional about the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people started their careers here, and she's like, this is the place where you learn, and yes, mistakes are made, but you understand also how to kind of set yourself as a broadcaster, right? So
Yeah.
A lot of the people that I'm super close with are friends that came from NewCap, from the TV station.
Yeah.
Like they were Moses Waldo,
Yep.
Annika, and Claire was in my wedding in the Philippines.
Yeah, they went to the Philippines
to
to
the
his
Philippines.
wedding. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Yeah, and they will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break and we'll come back and talk more about our time at Broadcast Center and some of our favorite people. And we'll touch more on some of the stories too that came out of there, and maybe take you a little bit behind the scenes and what it was like to work there as well in a huge building.
Absolutely.
It was a huge building. So
Absolutely.
we'll take a break and be right back here at Border City Furniture with more of the PROspectives.
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to give back to the communities that we live in. Thanks to the support of our clients in Lloydminster and area, in 2023, Jason Arden Associates has donated $40,000 to local nonprofits, charities, students, athletes, and other special events. How does your insurance company support our community?
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
It's more than just taxes at L&A CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at L&A CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. L&A CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Welcome to Wellings of Lloydminster and a community of ageless explorers. At Wellings, age is but a number and adventure is always part of the day. Come experience carefreedom living at Wellings of Lloydminster, where adults 55 plus enjoy a vibrant, stress-free way of life with a whole lot of fun. Stop in and say hello to new General Manager Nicole. And you can find Wellings at 7211 72nd Avenue on the Alberta side and visit wellingsoflloydminster.com for more information. Wellings of Lloydminster. Care Freedom Living starts here. I want to welcome you back inside Border City Furniture. You know how stressful it is to read commercials in front of Stacey Comer? like even read the news in front of Stacey Comer is like what we call news.
You did a
right?
great
We
job.
try to keep things positive, but it's like you did this for how many years? Like I can't screw up. Stacey's right
Come
here.
on, Kurt, you're Mr. Lloydminster. You were broadcasting for how long now? So
And
come on.
I did read the news one night because for a week they brought in celebrities to read the news.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember
yes,
that?
absolutely.
You were there.
Yep.
So they bring in celebrities to read the news. It was my first time ever with a teleprompter.
Yeah.
And it was like, how fast does this thing go? Even when you did my show last week,
Yeah.
it took me a week to realize I needed to slow the teleprompter down. I was telling Faye, I'm like, the teleprompter's going like 7,000 miles an hour. Oh yeah, that's because Stacey reads really fast. So
Well, and one unique thing, and we did this twice, was we actually had members of the RCMP come in full surges and anchor the news. They did the news, the sports, and the weather, and that was an initiative that they had brought to me. It was for community relations. I don't know any other television station that has ever done that, and it was awesome to have them in there, and to see an RCMP member in a red surge reading the sports or like trying to do the weather, and we did some training with them ahead of time, obviously. What a great community relations project, and that's what half of the job is about too, right?
Yeah.
Is you are a voice of the community, and so you, just like you do, Kurt, you want to promote positive events, and a lot of people see RCMP members, and if you don't have that relationship, you could be scared of them, right? And so this was kind of a way to help show that basically they're human and they made mistakes out there, so people could laugh at them. And we had huge responses to those shows when they anchored, and they did it twice, and it was awesome.
well, you meet so many unique characters.
Oh my goodness.
Like from my time in television, just like the people that influence me are people that I met there that just basically you understand when you see them that how much they care about a Lloydminster.
Yeah.
Vic Juba.
Absolutely.
Vic Juba's one. Ken Baker was another huge influence on
Yeah.
me and there were times where Ken and I disagreed on stuff, but
Yeah.
we still ended up having, a good relationship.
Yeah.
And I just admired that man so much. There's other people in the community. Mike Sidork's another guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Paul Clausen with what he does in the community. You meet these people,
Yeah.
and you meet them through what you do.
Yeah.
Like I met these people because I lived here for how many years before I actually worked there and wasn't involved in the community. Then I
Yeah.
start there, and you start to get like Kim. You don't have to stay in Lloyd. Like you came to Lloyd. This was your first job in Canada. Why do you stay in Lloyd? Like what is it that keeps you here?
Because again, like I worked at the station and I learned about Lloyd, and I've come to like love living in Lloyd. That's why we stayed. It's because of the station. If I was working for a different organization, that might be a different story. But again, the station kind of gave me. It was an eye opener of what the place I'm living at and what I'm bringing my family into.
That's a good point because a lot of times it gets that reputation as being a transient community, and that's kind of what when I talked to Calvin here at Border City Furniture about doing this show is a lot about, and he's born and raised here. His dad actually spent time working, had his own TV show.
That's right, Arnie.
Arnie had
Yep.
his own TV show at CKSA
Yeah.
TV. So Calvin gets it. Like that's
Yeah.
why Border City Prospectives is here at Border City Furniture, because you understand what the city does have a lot of good things to offer.
Yeah.
If you're not finding that it has good things to offer, you might want to start connecting with some different people.
Yeah.
That's the way that's
Yeah.
that's just the way that I see it.
Yeah.
And those people that meet and the connections that you have, sometimes good,
Yeah.
sometimes you meet people and it's a bad thing off the start.
Absolutely.
I remember some people getting mad at me for something that I said on the air, and now I have a good relationship with those people.
Yeah.
But they see it from my standpoint, and I see it from their standpoint. I can think of one gentleman that I had a disagreement with one time was Mike Sidork.
Oh.
I said something negative about the parking lot at Colonial Days, and Mike Sidork was not happy with me. Called me up, told me he wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having conversations about it.
Yeah.
And now I'd say, every time I see Mike, I just start to smile because
Yeah.
I know what he means to this community.
Absolutely.
I know what he meant to the Lloydminster exhibition. I know what he continues to mean for Border City Connects and I don't know how many different organizations that he's involved with, like kind of Rally for Cancer, just at
Yeah.
37,000. Like they weren't doing that kind of money before Mike Sidork got involved.
That's right, yeah.
You know, so you meet these people, you
Yeah.
get involved with these people. Here Comes Santa Claus is another one.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was started through
Yeah.
through when I worked for the radio station and went in and said, like, can we do something? Like, would you get behind sponsoring this? And there was a time when I think it was New Cap, and they were like, absolutely. That would be be sensational. Right. But I got to tell you, by the end, I was getting questions about why we were involved in it, and I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some, you could see things starting to change.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that,
Yeah.
because I do want to be positive about how things have gone. But we were talking about people that have come through there.
Yeah.
And I always get asked sometimes, who is the best broadcaster you work with? Who's the best? And for me, it was Reed Wilkins.
You know what? I have to agree with you. And if you know Reed behind the scenes, he is such a smart guy, and just the wit is like.
And the stats.
Oh my goodness. I have a great Reed Wilkins story. This was when he was, I think it was towards his end of the time doing sports here, but Bret Michaels from Poison was in town performing at the Cooler. There's another legend from Lloydminster. And Reed was a huge, huge fan. Like one of his favorite bands. Like there's Def Leppard and there's Poison, right?
Yeah.
So I had managed to get an interview with Bret Michaels and the lead singer of Poison. And so I was talking to him and I said, our sports guy's a huge fan. He wanted to come out, but he's on the air at 5:00. And so he can't meet you. He's like, well, let's give him a call. And so I picked up my phone and we called Reed and I said, hey, Reed, I got somebody here. He wants to talk to you. And so Bret Michaels had a conversation with Reed and he's like, hey, I hear that, you're a big fan. And he's like, I haven't been able to get our satellite. What's the score on this game and this game? And so Reed chatted with him about the ball scores and stuff. And so, yeah, it was a cool, but again, what job, you're going to work as an accountant. That's not going to happen.
John Dunsworth did that with, when he was in town with the Trailer Park Boys.
Oh, yeah.
He played Mr. Leahy, right?
Yeah.
And my brother was a huge, huge fan. I'm telling that. He's like, well, let's give him a call. Yeah. And so he calls him up and he stays in character because they always stayed in character. And he's like, Jason, you're in Saskatoon right now? Yeah. Listen, I need you to find a trailer park for us to buy, okay? This is a really good opportunity for you. It must have Sunny in it, okay? Any good trailer park has Sunny in it. So find a trailer. Like it was just like, and my brother was just like, but where else could you do and meet those kind of people? Mm-hmm. And speaking of meeting people, Reed Wilkins was the first person that I met after Michael Higgins. There was a get together on a Friday night and I got a phone call saying, hey, we're going to be at Ezzy's on the border. We're going to Ezzy's on the border. I can't remember who called me and let me know.
Yeah.
But we're going to Ezzy's on the border. It would be great for you to come meet all the staff that night. And everybody will be there. You're starting right away. And by starting, here's what I mean by starting. When I started at CKSA, Neil Bergen was like, hey, your first day will be like, it was like July 2nd or something like that. And so you have till then to get trained. So it was like, okay. So basically, we're not going to pay you, but you need to be ready to go for July 2nd. Here's your key. Come in the evenings after you're done. I was working for Lyle at the time with Marksman. It's like, so when you're done, come in. And Don Jennings and Janelle Moline. Yeah. It's not Janelle Moline anymore, but it was, and Janelle Moline will train you. And then when I went to, that night, Reed was like, hey, I'm Reed Wilkins. And I was like, well, I know who you are. We met at Nate. I met you at Nate. You're in a class, 2 classes in front of me or something like that. So I actually did meet you, but to me, he was just such a good broadcaster.
Absolutely.
And, he struggled to get noticed, and it was like, why is Reed still here?
Yeah.
You'd always ask yourself, why is Reed still here? The other day I was looking through archive footage and I found Brian Mudrick. Yeah. And it was like, wow, Brian looks like he's like 18 years old.
Well, he was his early 20s when he was here,
So Claire would have been the favorite person that you...
Yes, but I also just want to give a shout out to Mark Bradley, who was a camera guy / master control operator kind of like what I was doing when I started there, but he's probably the best cameraman that I've ever met, and like he also has like some good history under his belt being a camera guy. Yeah. And when I met him, he's kind of like at the tail tail end of his career, but we just had so much fun. I remember whenever we have a new camera person in the station, we would like haze them, but not like, but not physically. But we would, Mark and I would sit and we would be like, all right, you have 1 minute. Here's the tripod. Here's the lights. Here's the camera. Set it up for us. And you have 1 minute.
Why? Why?
We just want to see like where is the level of skill that we're working with. But yeah, we love doing those, and because we're so technical, we love the job. And I don't know, like Mark Bradley is probably the one person that spoke my language. That's why we got along.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, Kurt, we talk about that people were kind of in the present, but let's talk about the past. You know, Wes Saunders, excuse me, in the newsroom. And even going back to the days when there was only the 2 channels, right? So you had Grandpa Sneezeby, you know, all these shows were produced locally. You know, when you think about going back 65 years, like that's a long time, right?
Yep.
Jim McCardle brought up they had something called the Sneaky Snoopers Club, and he still has a list of there was like 6,000 people that had joined up, and they did something that was called Midwest Report. They had a political show, like all these shows on top of the other newscasts, right?
Yep.
And again, there was just the 2 stations because that was before cable, and you know, it's an institution in this community to have the local television stations there. And you I'm sure remember the story about the tower when somebody cut the TV tower down.
October 79.
Yeah, like again, that was before you and I were here, but then there was nothing for people to do. I mean, it's pre-internet, and I still to this day I don't think they know who was responsible for that.
Well, and according to Jim McCardle,
It's a train guy.
They don't know who.
Right.
But I actually called Kid Scotty.
Yeah.
I called Kid Scotty RCMP because they're the ones with the file. They got the file. It was their and I ended up talking to somebody, and they're like, never heard of it. Really? Never. But the receptionist did.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I was around when that. Yeah, I remember when that happened. But so like that archived footage.
Yeah.
And Daniel Barry ran that on the 50th anniversary of CKSA television.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and I wanted to investigate. I wanted to bring in Daryl Dunn, who's a private investigator.
Right, yeah.
And I wanted him to look over the files and go,
what happened
here?
Yeah.
And they can't find the files. But they're like, we've had floods and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, stuff is just...
Well, there was always rumors about what happened, but how do you know, right?
How do you know?
If any of it was actually true. But yeah, and then I did hear that there was a baby boom like 9 months after this happened because literally there was no television and nothing to do.
Nothing to do, so yeah. Yeah,
I guess so. I guess.
But that's like those stories, like, and coverage of those stories and things that happened and that was back when, like you said, somebody asked me the other day how many people worked there, and I said probably 60 when I worked there. And for you to say 73, so I must have been pretty close.
But everything was live. That was including radio, like you had radio from midnight till 6.
There was 8 radio announcers when I started there.
I know, isn't it crazy? Like I said, even having a 3-person sports department at one point in there, you know, because right before the layoffs happened, we had one sports person and he was responsible for sports and ag, but also couldn't really work weekends because there was kind of a no overtime thing happening. So, you know, and we had a lot of people criticize us over the years, especially because of the fact that staff, I mean, we just didn't have the people to get to everything we wanted to, right?
Well, Wes Saunders used to criticize us all the time.
That's right, yeah.
Wes was a big criticizer.
Yeah.
Nothing was ever good enough for Wes.
No, but there's so many things that we would like to have covered, but you just only have so many hours in the day. And at this point, too, you have to realize people were writing, shooting, reporting, editing, then they'd have to come back and anchor the newscast. And we didn't have enough staff to make sure that we had a live cast at late as well. So then we also had to pre-tape the late cast, right? So that's a lot of pressure for each person in a day. And then only having 5 people to do all that. Like, honestly, we tried to cover as much as we could, but there's just a time when you can't, like with the people. And then if there's vacation or someone has a sick day or it's vacation and someone has a sick day at the same time, then it was like almost impossible. And over the years, like we used to have a stringer up in Cold Lake and Bonnyville that would report up in those areas. But just as positions kept getting cut, it was just more difficult and more difficult to cover all the events. And like we used to be able to do court cases and follow all of that stuff through. And that's what people want to see. But it was just unfortunate. And it wasn't just
it's
necessarily.
A lot of sitting around when you're covering court cases and stuff.
Yeah.
Just like waiting.
Well, and it's not necessarily just happening in Lloydminster. Like all of broadcasting in general experienced
Well, how
cuts.
much stuff happens in North Battleford, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to send somebody over North Battleford.
Well, absolutely. But, you know, even the big stations now, a lot of them don't even have sports departments anymore. anymore. So
Oh, no.
it is a sign of the times, just the way things were going. And it's a lot of industries, right? You're doing more with less. So, there was a lot of stuff I would love to get to, especially these community events, like you talk about the parade year after year. Not only do we broadcast it, but we covered it during the Lloyd X Fair. Without fail, your assignment today, you're going on the rides. Next day, you're testing out the food, right? The next day, it's the demolition derby, right? So it was just all these things that people would love to see, and they waited for it, year after year, right? So whether it be back in the 60s when you had these great shows, and everybody mentions Grandpa Sneesby, like without a doubt, that's the show that everybody remember from back in the day, right? So
because it's creative.
Absolutely. And the fact that legacy from there even to now, like the names that we've mentioned today, it's sad that we're not going to have a place for young broadcasters to go now. Between Lloydminster and Medicine Hat shutting down, there's just not a lot of options, unfortunately.
Young broadcasters, and again, I could
Yeah.
speak on behalf of like the young videographers and young, because
it covers everything.
it covers everybody. Yeah, it covers everybody. And again, like what if my foundation, I learned everything from working at news. I also work in the news in the Philippines, but if you take away news, like where would they like have these foundation starts and build that foundation for like shooting and like even like setting up a like we make fun of like the hazing, but like we want to see how you take care of the camera, how you light a one person light shoot, like how would you do that? And those are the things that you learn in the station.
And then you have those skills, like as you said, that take you through your career, right? So
it saddens me that the Wes Saunders newsroom is no more.
Absolutely.
Because I had a huge part in that, in creating that. That was something that I wanted.
And Wes appreciated that too. Like
Wes
when we
really
had him in there
appreciated
that day, and
I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Absolutely. And the questions he had, like I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm getting grilled here, and like, so what do you do here, and what time are you guys doing this? And he was interested. Like everybody knows Wes, who's lived in Lloydminster for a long amount of time. They watched him on the news, and he was the consummate newsman, right? Like nothing got by him. And like I said, even when you were able to set up naming our newsroom the Wes Saunders newsroom, having him in there, it was like he was back right in the middle of everything, and that he was calling the shots. So
You know how I met him? I did not meet him at Broadcast Center. So I worked doing the morning show, and then I would get off work and go to work at Canadian Tire. So I would work, I'd show up about 4 o'clock in the morning, get the show ready and stuff, and work till 10, and then I would go work at Canadian Tire, make some extra money. And one day Wes came in and was my customer.
Oh.
And so he was like, he knew who I was. I knew who he was. And it ended up being just like we just had a conversation. Like I was surprised I didn't get yelled at, because Wes would come in quite often. And he'd always seek me out.
Right.
And then we'd have a conversation about things that are going on in Lloydminster and stuff like that. And he became a regular customer there, a regular customer that I would spend about a half an hour with.
Yeah.
Working at Canadian Tire just to talk. And he would just say, well, I saw this on the news last night, and like their lighting is terrible. And like he would say, and their writing is terrible. And it was just like, and can't you get a message to somebody say, this is what they need to do? Like it was really, like that's how I met Wes. And then established that relationship with him. Knew his sons already, of course, knew Rob, of course, but that's how I established a relationship with Wes Saunders. And then when he did, on occasion, very rarely come into the station, it was like a celebrity was in the building. It was like even Vic Juba. Vic Juba had so much to do with the parade and stuff like that. When he was in the building, there was an energy. I would say that vibrant. Oh, Vic Juba's here.
Well, you want to talk about somebody who's been involved in community. I interviewed him, I don't even know how many times, but each time it was because he was involved in a different charity. Like one thing you were going to mention, Kurt, is we used to run the Lions Club telethon. It was a broadcast that we would do for 6 hours, and the television station gave them the time, and it was like Telemiracle for the Lions Club. And they had the totals.
Hosted it once. How many times do you host it?
Oh, I don't like. I'm 4 or 5 times. Like when I moved to Saskatoon, they even had asked me to come back and host the one year, which I did, because I loved it. Like it was such a great community event. They had interviews, they raised money for great causes. They did the totals just like Telemiracle.
Very professional.
Yeah. And they showcased local talent, which was awesome. So they would do auditions and they'd have, singers, dancers, entertainers, everything. It was amazing. That is probably one of my favorite things that I did with the station.
I met Kenny Mack on
Absolutely.
Mr. Lyons Telethon.
Yep.
First time I met Kenny Mack, who became friends with him.
Yep.
And it's real benefits to be friends with Kenny Mack. He calls you to move.
Did he give you free hot sauce though?
I don't know if I did give free hot sauce.
There you go.
The hot sauce was the thing.
No, just recently.
Yeah.
I had him on to talk about his. He gave me some which I think my brothers ate all of. But anyway, but like walking through, like I was thinking about this the other day. One of the things because I love Gord Bamford.
Yeah.
I really like Gord Bamford's music, and Gord was not a real big star at the time. But I remember coming out of the on-air booth and walking down the hallway, and Gord Bamford turned and walked towards me. I was like, Gord? He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing here? Oh, I just thought I'd stop in. They sent me down to do an interview. I'm like, oh, really? And I can't remember, I can't remember who was on the air at the time, but I just come out of the on-air booth, and I'm not sure they even knew that Gord Bamford was there. Like, it just wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
That Gord was just Gord.
Right.
But of course I was like, hey, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Like, I Would For You is a great song, Gord. I remember telling him that. And he was like, well, thank you, I appreciate it. But he wasn't Gord Bamford with the bus.
Yeah. Well, and you even look at somebody like Brett Kissel. We had followed his career since he was about 12 years old performing in St. Paul. We were doing TV stories with him then. We would go up to St. Paul and he would be performing. He'd come into the station as well, if he was in Lloyd or radio and TV. Like there was always talking with Brett. And look at what Brett's doing now, right? So
I used to do they used to have us out to Vermilion for the fair to do live on locations. And I would basically spend a day with Brett Kissel.
Yeah.
Basically he was waiting to perform, and I was, in between cut-ins, you're looking around for something to talk about and stuff like that. And Brett was always there, and Brett would always be like, "Let me know if you want to interview. Let me know if you want to interview," because that's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah.
Right? Let me know if you want.
But
I'll come on.
Even as his fame continued to grow, he was always gracious doing interviews. I'd reach out to his team, and always he would get back. And he loved talking about the Oilers. Of course, he was talking about whatever he was doing recently, and talking about his family because he's a big family guy. And just an awesome human being as well. And it's nice that he's from the Flat Lake, Alberta, right? So around St. Paul, coming from here, and that he still would take the time to chat with us, right? So
that's the thing. I met so many
absolutely
awesome people working there. Like Kim, how many relationships do you still have from working there, right? I would say probably like in Lloydminster, like just in Lloydminster. Not talking about the Claire Hannas and the stuff who moved away, but just in Lloydminster.
Oh yeah, like one person that stood out is Jesse Mann, who works at the Catholic school division, because we would have like the school segment every week. And I remember when I moved on, I talked to Jesse like, hey, I'm moving on, and I have this. I want to start my own video production company, and then. That was 2016, and the Catholic School Division is like one. I still do their videos up until this point.
Yeah.
And Jesse Mann has became one of my best friends.
And I think too, Kim, especially going out to as many shoots as you would have gone to, you have those relationships that I think you don't even realize. It's the people that you go to the co-op and they're like, oh, hey, Kim, and they remember you because you were out at that shoot in Macklin, which we're never going to let you live down now, by the way. Or, you covered a hockey game in Neilburg or something. Like, we had our dryer break the other day, and the dryer repairman from DNL came in, and right away he said, he walked in my front door, he says, we miss our local news. So it's these people that you interact with on a daily basis, or they watched you, so they feel that they know you, or whatever the case was. And those are all relationships you have too. I mean, even since the layoffs happened, I've been at the co-op or at Safeway, and someone said, oh, hey, like, what happened, So, and it's those things that you don't, I don't want to say take for granted, but you just don't realize what an impact local television had, right? So.
Yeah, not to get too negative, but one of the things that I found is, since they closed the television station down, is also, I'm shocked by this. How many people have told me it's a shame we don't have the radio station anymore?
Yeah.
I'm like, all you have to do is turn it on.
Yeah.
to check.
But the other thing is too is that the television station supplied all of the news to
Yep.
the local radio station, right?
Yep.
So it's coming out of Edmonton now, and my understanding is that there's news releases and such. But I mean, we provided the audio from the council meetings and from anything that we covered as well. And it's not a knock against the the current staff in the station, but that's just the way that it was. They don't have a full-time news staff, right? So
no,
yeah,
they don't.
yeah, and I've heard that from people as well.
No, it's one of my criticisms is, and I said this on this show, they had the opportunity to hire a professional to do news out of Lloydminster like Stacey Comer, and they didn't take it. So when I hear them say stuff like, we think we're a growing company, it's like, well, maybe in properties, but definitely not when it comes to getting information out there. And the other thing was when Medicine Hat shut down, there was an article written by, I can't remember her name. She had written an article.
Oh yeah, she was interviewed, the former news director. Yes, yeah.
But she had said maybe news shouldn't be something we make money on.
Well, and for the longest time,
And I've been thinking about that a lot
Well,
since.
for the longest time, that's the way it was too. Is news and sales should never, right? Like in the newsrooms were not profitable. Like that's
Codependent,
that was just, it was considered
Yeah.
a service almost, right? And then of course and I'm talking like 70s, 80s, right? And then of course corporations got involved, and then that started to change. But because you're supposed to be unbiased, and the thought process is, well, if you have all of a sudden a company who's saying we're giving you so much, right, for this,
Or
then
you have a government
that's
saying we're
right.
giving you
yeah,
so much for
exactly.
this.
Yeah. So it's a delicate
I
balance,
don't want to
right?
get into too much CBC talk.
Yeah,
but
but what the solution is, I mean, what you're doing, Kurt, obviously is awesome. Having local people on and promoting community events too. I still would like to see, like there was a suggestion that maybe it could be done like a CKUA model and have television here. So I don't know if we'll see that happen again, but it sure, Lloydminster, this area, I mean, it's a huge trading area. Like 250,000, I think, was our broadcast reach. Yeah, exactly. So that's a lot of people. And you got stories, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, Wainwright, Vermilion, North Battleford, Meadow Lake. I mean, all of these communities, like last night, the tornado, for
Macklin.
example. Macklin, yes.
Well,
the tornado last night.
Ask you that. Like,
yeah.
There was a time where if there was a tornado, you just sent somebody out there.
Absolutely.
You said, go look for destruction.
And you try and get people to send in pictures, right?
Yeah.
Like if it was a time in social media, send us your pictures, like where, when, right? Kind of a thing. And so, but yeah, you'd always try and get somebody out there.
Yeah.
I would love to be a tornado hunter.
Well, Kim, you have the equipment.
That's right.
What's keeping you?
Yes.
My family, I guess.
Don't let fear and common sense
That's
hold you back.
right.
It's interesting that since Kim said that he got cheers, pull it into Macklin. Hey, the news department. I've been thinking about something that Jeremy Thompson told us.
Another great
Another
reporter.
great
Yeah,
reporter
yeah.
that's you see on CTV National News
Yeah.
all the time now too, is that they had to take the logos off their vehicles
Absolutely.
in Edmonton because news was seen as such a negative thing.
That was when COVID was happening.
Yeah. Like,
And they weren't the only station that did it. Yeah.
But how far we have come. So do
Absolutely.
you think they've put them back on?
I don't know if they have, but I know it became during that time, again, a lot of people weren't able to work, right? So they were sitting in front of their computers. And so that's when a lot of misinformation also started coming out. And that's the fear now, right? With nobody, and I know there's a lot of distrust of mainstream media, but I want people to know too that like in Lloydminster, we considered ourselves a community station. Yeah. We were not a Fox News creating opinions, doing opinion pieces, editorials, that kind of thing. The stories, I mean, anybody who watched could see it was city council. It was fundraising for this person who needed help, or and that's where I think was one of the biggest things where we were able to help was when somebody was in need in the community. We could do stories about it and help if they needed money for like a new wheelchair or something.
Yeah.
One feature we used to run was Pet Project with the SPCA. Without fail, the animals featured were getting adopted, and if they said they needed blankets and food, whatever they needed, those donations were filled. Yeah. So I saw us as a community service type of a station, not as a mainstream media where people think you're out there giving opinions, you're biased for one side.
Exploitation. We weren't there to exploit. Yeah.
That's right.
There's one community you haven't mentioned that really relied on news as well from this area, and now that I think there's a lack of, and I think I need to fill that a little bit too, is Onion Lake.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because news was our connection a lot of the time. Well, think about when they released the bison.
Yep. Yeah.
you guys were there.
Absolutely.
I
yeah.
wasn't there. I was like, well, TV will be there.
Well, and even Frog Lake too, for that matter. Like they have lots of great business development things up there. I was asked, I think it was 2015, to be part of the Grand March for the powwow in Frog Lake. What an amazing experience! Like it's just something. If you ever get the chance to do, take it, because you're walking in there and just the energy that you feel and being part of something like that is incredible. And there is a reporter in Lloydminster now from APTN, but it's kind of limited in what she can do, and she is actually relocating to Saskatoon. But there are so many stories to be told up there. I mean, you could literally have a reporter up there every day, and you still wouldn't cover all the stories.
Well, they just released how they're opposed to
yes,
C5.
absolutely, yeah,
So
they have lots of economic development news, and Frog Lake was the same too, right? They have so much going on. But again, if you don't have a large staff to cover that, it's difficult to do. But yeah, absolutely. Lots of communities like that in this area.
And City Hall, covering City Hall. I mean, man, it's such a task to cover City Hall.
It is.
People don't realize how important that is to our community.
Yeah.
But how much of a...
Where are your tax dollars being spent, right?
But it's a real drag on resources to cover City Hall.
It is,
really is. So, like, for me, it's like I'm me.
Yeah.
Like what are like even last week when we had the was it last week now? It seems like a month ago that we had both premiers in town.
Yeah. Right.
And Faye and I, went to cover it. We were just so disappointed with how it was, there was no getting close to the microphone or anything like that. It was it's a drag on resources.
Yeah.
So you may show up to something and get nothing.
That's right. Yeah.
True.
Like we felt we got nothing.
Yeah.
Like we felt going there, we just didn't.
Right.
It wasn't our thing, but we had to be there.
Yeah.
We wanted to be there, and it was interesting to see both premiers.
Absolutely.
And they're going to come back, but I hope when they come back, there's more of an opportunity to connect about, because I was hoping that it was going to be about Lloydminster.
Yeah.
About our health care.
Yeah, a lot of people I saw on social media were posting questions. Did they talk about what's happening with the hospital, with the needs assessment, all of that stuff,
cross-border
right?
trade.
Yeah.
Which is Bill C5.
Yeah.
That I have no idea how it works.
Yeah.
I don't think the government has any idea.
Well, and speaking of how things work, that's another thing about reporters and anchors in Lloydminster. It's such a unique city. You have to learn Alberta and Saskatchewan, right? So, gosh, this past election, we had Saskatchewan election, we had civic election, Alberta elections coming up. There was a federal election, right? And you have to cover all of that. Right. And not only that, but you have to realize how the city works, right? So yes, City Hall, Saskatchewan side. So the school boards, well, they go by the Saskatchewan rules, right? So it's different. We'd have a lot of kids from NAIT coming in and be like, no, it's not the rules from Alberta. They go by what's on the Saskatchewan side. You get a speeding ticket. Well, it's different if you get it on the Saskatchewan side or the Alberta side, right? So this is such a unique city on its own. And then throwing these kids in and having to learn all that too, like what a great learning experience.
Right. And that's something that I want to say too, like just the work that goes behind the scene. So sometimes like that's what majority of the people don't see, but like our reporters, if you're a beat writer for the city council, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And again, like people don't see that, but just to like give more emphasis on
a lot of times people don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. That's true.
Right?
That's true. Yeah.
Did you ever set up like for streeters?
I have. I don't have like one thing that stood out, but I remember doing a Cold Lake election. And then we were at one of the candidates' house, the mayor, or one of the mayors there. And then we were at the losing place. And then the mayor was like, you guys were in the wrong area. Like, you're in the wrong house. Like, oops. I think I was with Hannah. I think.
Oh,
that
yes.
Yeah.
But how many times did you guys send a camera out to the post office?
Oh, that was the post office and the mall parking lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a place.
Just to get people coming. What's your opinion of? What are you looking forward to the fair this year?
Yeah.
Like how many stories did you do at the fair where kids are like, and I always look at those stories and I'll go, that kid's like 35.
Yeah, exactly, right? The kid that's got the lemonade and the sticky confetti or the cotton candy all over his face.
Doesn't he stay right in front of the camera?
Yeah. That kid's now like 35, 40 years old.
Well, and how many shoots, Kim, were you on? For that, we did the feature called Beyond the Classroom, and you'd be shooting with kids, and as you know, they say never work with kids and animals, right? And you're trying to get the shot, and there's kids waving behind you.
Kids are the best.
And you're trying.
I remember Mark Bradley was like filming, and then there was like a kid constantly going in front of it, and Mark just had it, and Mark was like, "Excuse me, not today." But what's so funny is every time I go to a Beyond the Classroom segment, for some reason the Filipino kids would look at me. And they would just stare at me. And I think I had it one day. I was like, I'm not your dad. I'm sorry.
So, Kim, the other thing that happens is, if stuff is happening, like stuff's going on, they have a protest or they have something going on, right? And then all of a sudden you show up, and people start to stand up straighter. People, as soon as there's a camera on site,
red button, red tally button.
Yeah.
I think about, like, they had that protest here on the street the other day, and as soon as we got there, it was like, now it's important.
Yeah.
Right? All of a sudden, there's reporters around.
The press is there.
The press is there.
Well, and
things
sometimes
change.
you would get calls saying, we want to have this event, but we want to make sure that the television
Yes.
cameras can be there.
Yeah.
So what time works best for you, right?
Yes.
So,
People don't realize how often that would happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And, for me, one of the things that I miss the most about radio, and I don't listen to local radio anymore because I like that live aspect of somebody calls in and says, that's what I miss.
Yeah.
I think that's what people miss around this
Absolutely.
area.
And I would
having
rather
people
hear-
call in and say, and people used to say, you shouldn't be reporting traffic, speed traps.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be reporting. And then I call the RCMP and they say, oh, no, we put them in the paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, go ahead, report it. They're in the paper. Like, everybody can look them up. The goal is not to give out tickets. The goal is to get people to slow down.
Yeah.
So people would call and go, you shouldn't be reporting those. People should get tickets. No, that's not what they're out to do.
Yeah.
I called the RCMP. They're fine with letting you know.
Well, and
Can't get that anymore.
I would rather in the mornings listen to someone who's telling me the news and the weather as opposed to someone who's talking about celebrities and because it's a generic syndicated thing, or what a great weekend it was to shop at Costco. Like, there's no Costco here yet. Well, why don't you talk about what's happening at the farmers market? But when you are in every single market, you can't make it that, right?
Yeah.
And I would rather hear a young kid out of Nate, maybe struggling a bit, not the greatest talent, but is telling me, oh, there's a tornado watch, right? Or, there is going to be, this is what happened in the news, right? I would far rather hear that.
Okay, I'll tell us. I won't say who it was, but I remember a young news reader working both in television and radio, going down the hallway at CKSA and mumbling to himself and going, news, news, news. Because Michael Higgins had a thing, you had to say the news properly.
You have to say news.
You had to say news.
Absolutely.
And so he was, news. Like, what are you doing? Oh, Michael's all in a huff because I didn't say news properly on my last cast. It was so funny, but it's like, that's the standard that you were
Absolutely.
that you were held
and
to.
it was North Battleford.
Yep.
You couldn't use the term yesterday or got. Those were his two. You could not use those in your stories. And
well, in broadcasting, they teach you one of the first things you do when you go to a new location is ask the other announcers how to pronounce the names of the towns closest to you.
Yeah.
But you could always tell the ones who didn't because of Eiley.
Yes, yeah.
It would always be like, and just south of Islay.
Yep.
Always, every single time.
Yeah. And where they would get
Kid Scotty.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times I bugged Heather because she couldn't say Kid Scotty.
Yeah,
it was
Kit
always
Scotty.
Kit Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where they would get kind of trapped is if we had to have someone fill in on the weather. And then, of course, you've got all these communities, Saskatchewan and Alberta, right?
Yeah.
So, there's lots that if you haven't grown up in the area, you don't know what the names are, right?
Yeah.
So, that's when you know right away, right?
Who's from the area.
Absolutely.
Or common names that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like Dichuk.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you hear a young reporter say a name and you're like, oh, man, he just butchered that. Like,
Yeah, and I would be watching from home a lot of the times, and I'd be texting, and because the fault report would come out after each show, and then it would be, I tried to do it in a positive way, right? So, hey, you say this place, or you say this guy's name, right? You're sending it in, and just to let everybody know.
When you worked in Master Control, Kim, did you ever fall asleep?
I think I have, and have maybe run like some CBC commercials that I shouldn't.
Because when I was there, they talked about how one of the guys in Master Control fell asleep, and Ken Ruptash left a note on him saying, "Come see me when you wake up." So Ken was one of the general managers, of course, and one of the owners, really.
Right.
Him and Graham Brown when I was there.
Yeah.
But it was so funny to Ken did that.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I have another Master Control.
Because I can tell you, when I had to do church on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were times
Yeah.
where I.
One of the long-term master control operators, this was when beta was still, you'd have to get up. They have alarms in master control. I don't know if they did when you were in there, Kim, but when they had the beta tapes, the alarms would go and you'd have to get up and you'd put the beta in, switch out, write it down, put the old one. And he said that his alarm went off when he was at home one morning, like sleeping. He got up, he put a tape in his VCR and pulled it out and went back to bed because it was just such a habit,
It's
right?
a routine.
Yeah, yeah. And he was still working in master control when the layoffs happened. So
I did one morning show in pajamas because I woke up at like 5:55 one morning when we lived just over here.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's with Strashik? Because I was working with Mark Strashik at the time. How is Strashik? We have this rule. He's supposed to call me if I'm not there by 5:30. I've slept in. And same rule.
Yeah.
And we came around the corner at the exact same time. So I came around the corner, he comes around the corner, we park. What happened? We fell asleep. He had to do the news at 6 o'clock. I could at least walk in, get myself centered. And that was in the old days where you'd print
rip
off
the teletype.
Yeah. And so he was ripping and reading.
Yeah.
But Neil Bergen had a thing that he started was because we were there till midnight.
Yeah.
So the last thing you did before you signed off was, you'd print off all the scores from the night before,
put them on,
leave them for him in the morning so he
Yeah.
could get there and read the sports. And we just continued to do that. And I was like, oh, thank goodness we kept doing that.
Yeah.
Like keeping the scores. My job's easy.
I still have nightmares about working in radio and television and
And being
something
late.
happens, or you get there and your cast is not there ready for you, or right. So
Well, I worked with David Nelson. David was like, he was so prompt. And,
Yeah.
But what I remember most about David is in the morning, he wouldn't talk. So they would tell you, they tell you, talk to your co-host. Talk with them. Get your vocal cords
Right.
working.
Yeah.
Get your brain moving. Get things going before you do your morning show. And David Nelson was, good morning, and just walk the other way. And then comb his hair. He
had long hair.
He had
Yeah.
long hair, and
Yeah.
I don't know, every time I walked by, he seemed to be combing his hair.
Yeah.
And I had a dream the other night. This is kind of stupid, but I had a dream the other night when David Nelson fell down some stairs, and he just kept rolling and rolling and rolling, and finally I caught him and stopped. He was like, call an ambulance. And I'm like, because I still think of it, and I'm like, okay, I called an ambulance. They can't come right away. Okay, I'll just catch a ride with a street sweeper. There's a street sweeper going by, and I still dream about people that I worked with, and still have these, all these. I remember David Nelson telling me about when he was a kid and tying up a gopher and putting it in the, on the air, doing stuff like. I didn't know that about David, right?
Yeah.
So I discovered stuff working with David Nelson that I had no idea that he did, and it was enjoyable, but I couldn't get him to talk in the morning. Like, Dave, there's life beyond combing your hair.
Well, and one thing too, and Kim, you'll be aware of this. Obviously, working at the station, bloopers happen, right? Live TV.
My favorite is Gerald Lampao, but I don't think I can say it here.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
Well, and we have the one with Adam Cook, who went on to work at CTV. He thought that the guy had in his ear had, or it was actually the floor director at the time, was Phil Manderson, had told him he thought that they were in commercial, but what he was saying was, "You're back on air." And so Adam had proceeded to pick up his drink, and then you see him like this and puts it back down and keeps reading. And then one time,
I remember Phil Manderson.
Yeah, one time the lights in the studio, something had happened, they wouldn't work, so they tried to do the late night newscast, and they only had one light, and Courtney Terrio was there, and he looked like he was a ghost. And
welcome to the Halloween special.
Absolutely, it was. I mean, the number of bloopers, and it's just the nature of it, live television, right? So.
Oh man, we could talk forever.
We could.
But
yes.
We might have to do this again.
Anytime.
We might have to do this again.
But you'll have stories in the back pocket.
Kim, Stacey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you,
and thank you once again to Border City Furniture for these comfortable seats and for hosting us again on the Border City PROspectives. Have a fantastic sort of Canada Day long weekend. Can we say?
Yeah.
Most people take Monday off.
I think so.
Enjoy it.